there, Jenny T here, and in this video I'm going to share with you the different styles of box pleat balances that you can make inside of this Sewing Tips Mag issue. You can make actually quite a few different styles based off of the instructions, so I'm going to explain that to you and then talk to you about how you can get your finished measurements before you get started trying to figure out how much fabric that you're going to need. So we're going to make this a twofer video. We're going to talk about the styles, and then we're going to talk about the finished measurements, okay? So this is the box pleat valance that's on the cover, and it's pretty neat because it's really just a basic box pleat valance with a center pleat, one center pleat, and obviously the only difference here is that the edge is different, shorter in the center, long on the sides. And so that we will sew this one a little differently than the others because of this edge, but it's a really nice look, isn't it? And so this is one style. Another style that looks just like this, but your typical standard box pleat valance, if you imagine, you would just draw a line across the bottom, all one fabric with that center pleat. Now I do have a photo of a, sorry, let me find it real quick for you. There we go. This is a center pleat box pleat valance. Now this particular photo has contrasting fabric on the inside of the pleats, so ignore that for now, okay? So when you want to make the basic box pleat valance, that's the one that's what I call it in the magazine, with just one fabric straight across the bottom. You can choose to make it with one center pleat, or you can choose to make it with multiple pleats. Those instructions are for both. It will have you choose and decide how many pleats you want, and then you can make it with just one center pleat, or you can make it with multiple pleats. Again, it's basic because it's straight along the bottom and it's all one fabric, okay? The next variation on that is this one here. So the instructions will be very similar, but sewing it will be a little different. So make sure you go use these instructions if you want to make this exact style. Another style that we're going to make, or you can make, is the button back box pleat valance. Now what this is a box pleat valance that has multiple pleats going across just like this one, except that it has a contrasting fabric on the inside of the pleats, okay? Just like this one here. It has a contrasting fabric on the inside of the pleat, okay? And it's called a button back because you finished it off by pulling the edges back to button. But you could certainly make this valance with the contrasting color and ignore the buttons, okay? So there will be instructions for you for the button back box pleat valance, and if you want to ignore the buttons, that's up to you. And then there will also be instructions to make this center pleat box pleat valance with the contrasting fabric in it. And the reason that I needed to make a separate one for this one was because when I wrote the instructions for this one quite a while ago, I focused on the multiple pleats because that's the look of this style, these multiple pleats. I didn't really focus on just the, one pleat, this one right here. So I have a separate set of instructions. You'll find that it's all very similar in the end, okay? And you can make this one here. And just to show you, here's one button back, and then here's another one with a girls' room, obnoxious pink walls, and some really fun fabric, okay? So that is the different styles that you're going to get to make in this issue. As you can see, you've got quite a bit of options, and so let's talk a little bit now about the finished measurements, all right? So I'm going to use this photo as an example because it's the nicest photo and it's easy to explain everything. So these are attached to a wood board, okay? And I actually have a video in the issue that shows you exactly how to install your dust board. So there's a board here, and so you'll want to decide where you want to install that board. Now, it's very common to have your valance start at the ceiling line and come down. It gives the room consistency, especially if the windows are of different heights from the ceiling. And so this is a very common thing to find. See that even this one here, it's a poor photo, but as you can see, it's up against the ceiling. So it's a very common way to install the valance. This one here, because the ceiling is so high, it's not. It's just directly above the window. So you need to decide on your own where you want that board to be, okay? And then from there down, you need to decide how far down you want your valance to go. Now, there is really no set length here. It's really a rule of thumb. So this could be this looks like it's maybe 20 inches, okay? So you'll want to make sure that the center pleat lowest end comes down below the top frame of the window, okay? Because this window, I don't know where it is, but it could be right here for all we know. So you gotta make sure this low end is below the window. And so for this valance here, you'll want to capture a measurement here, and you'll want to capture the measurement here. Now, you need to install temporarily your dust board where you plan on, hanging the valance. You need to install this board, okay? Now, if you know you're going to come from the ceiling, then you don't really need to. You can just measure from the ceiling down. If you're not, if your ceiling's too high or you want your board someplace else, you really should install your board first and then use that to measure from. Because you're going to measure from the top of the board down to your length, and that is the finished length of your valance, okay? So now let's talk about the width, because really all that a box pleat valance is a sewn wide piece of fabric folded and fit onto the board. That's all. That's really it. A lined piece of fabric folded and pleated and then stapled to a board. That's all a box pleat valance is. It's very, very simple to make. So our goal here is to eventually get the measurements of what the full cut width of the fabric will be, which will, if you were to unfold this one here, may come out to here because of the pleats, okay? And then the cut length. And you get those first by getting the finished dimensions of your valance, and then you'll plug those into the formula in the book to get the cut width of the fabric, okay? So let's talk about the width now. You have to consider the returns. These are the returns, okay? So this is the depth of the board. So it's usually about 3 inches, but you certainly want to get your board first so that you know for sure, okay? Because you don't want to get too less of fabric or too more of fabric. So you need to consider the return here, and then the finished width of the full valance, okay? Ignore the number of pleats right now. That will be figured out later, okay? So just ignore the number of pleats and ignore if you want to do this style or not. In this case, it's all the same for any of these styles. So the finished measurement, the finished width is return plus finished width plus return, okay? So if we could say this is 3 inches plus 3 inches, and like we could say this is 60 inches, so plus 60 inches. So in this example, the finished width of the valance may be 66 inches, okay? Maybe this one's 36 inches wide plus the returns, so 3 plus 36 plus 3 is 42 inches. So the finished width of this valance is 42 inches, okay? Don't forget to include those returns, all right? And how do you determine what the finished width is? Well, you can just eye it, but what you'll do is you'll first kind of measure from the outside frame to the outside frame just to get a base number. But typically, as you can see here, you usually want the valance to extend past the window frame at least 2 inches on each side, okay? So so you can just basically hold up a tape measure, or have someone hold an end of a tape measure, measure over, and get a width. I would choose a nice even number. Don't make your life difficult. Don't choose 33 1/4 inches or something like that. You know, round up, make it an easy number to work with. In the end, no one's going to know if you decided to do 3 inches on each side instead of 2 or whatever, okay? So that's how you get your finished measurements. You have your finished width. Make sure you include the returns on both sides, and then your length, your finished length, is from the top of your board down to the desired length. This is about 20 inches. You typically will look at your window, and a rule of thumb, I suppose, if you need a rule of thumb, might be 1/4 of the distance down the window to start from, okay? You really can't go wrong with this. As you can see, this one's kind of nice and high. This is really, really short. This is probably only about 14 inches high. I believe this one is 14 inches high. And if you look at this one here, this one's a little bit taller, maybe about 18 inches. And you can almost see underneath this one, the way the photo was taken, the top of the window frame is just about right here. So it started from here, and it added height to the window, but it doesn't come down very far. So see, my rule of thumb's already broken. It doesn't come down 1/4. Okay, the window. It just comes down enough to cover the top edge of the window. See? So you just kind of have to decide what you want, how you want it to look. Look at some photos, get some ideas, and then you can make it. Okay? All right, so now that you know how to get your finished measurements, you know its style, go ahead and click on this style that you want from the table of contents, and let's get started making your box pleat valance.